All right, everybody. Hey, good afternoon. I really want to welcome you guys today to an event we're really excited to host. We feel very fortunate to be able to bring this sort of thing to you. And used to be we would do these in person, but now we're in a virtual world. We're in a new normal. And today we're going to spend about an hour or so. And first of all, I want to say thank you for taking time today to be here. And I know we're all living in a different world. And one of the things that I think a lot of you hear me say, even when we're talking to you, is I want to make sure everybody's safe and healthy. And I think today's topic is similar, and we're trying to make sure your financial wellness, that you guys are safe. And you can see the topic is about cybersecurity. And it's, believe it or not, I was taking some notes to myself. I get more questions about this only second to taxes. So it seems like, and our speaker here, this is his, this is what he's an expert in, but we get all kinds of taxes every single year, especially with the new tax law. But this is something we've been dying to roll out to our clients because I get questions. And I'll be frank, I'm really not the expert. That's why we have Jared here today. The other thing I wanted to mention, I know we talk about things, you guys always, when I'm talking, I say, hey, what are the things we can control in investing? And we talk about how we embrace markets and diversification and things like rebalancing. But, I can't control the markets on a daily basis, but this is something that you guys can control. And you're going to walk away from here today with a few things that you can do immediately to help protect you from cybersecurity crime and identity theft. Okay. It is, it is something. I was reading some notes from Jared. It's something that is predictable, and you guys have the power to stop it. And it's still showing a very steep and steady incline. And there is no evidence of this thing slowing down. And it looks, I guess they're estimating, here's some facts that kind of blew me away. In 2021, it's estimated to cost $6 trillion. Okay. That, if we could just do this alone, we'd save a lot of money in the federal budget if we could just protect ourselves from this. I didn't know this either. US citizens are the #1 target. I guess we're the most vulnerable and the easiest to access. We incur the most loss, and we fall victim to both domestic and the international scams. So we got to be diligent. And again, my goal today is to make sure that we're giving you that education to make sure you guys are safe. And I think what you're going to find from our speaker today, I'm going to introduce him in a second, is how to protect yourself and ways to identify some attempts too. So this is going to be interesting. Lastly, I forgot to mention this in the beginning. I apologize. So everyone is going to be on mute. I'm going to actually knock my camera off in a minute. We're going to turn this off or over to our featured speaker. And if you'd like to ask some questions, please type in the Q&A on your Zoom window those questions. I will try to look at them, and I may have Cooper, who's also on the call, to make sure we can consolidate these. But we want to try to address those questions, and then I'll pose them to Jared, and then we will finish with a wrap up, and we should be done by maybe 5:30 or so. So let me introduce Jared really quick. So Jared Hoffman is a managing director at Buckingham Strategic Partners, which is a strategic partner of our firm. Part of Jared's role includes educating firms and clients on best practices around cybersecurity with an emphasis on the behavioral aspect. Jared also is a member of Infragard, a partnership between the FBI and the public-private sector created to share information and trends on cybercrime, tactics, and defenses. Jared lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and prior to joining Buckingham, I think this is kind of neat, Jared spent 12 years as a sports reporter and an editor for the Sporting News and Major League Baseball. By the way, I'm a Minnesota Twins fan. I just thought I'd throw that out. And but anyhow, please welcome Jared Hoffman. Jared, it's your floor.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate everyone attending today. What we're going to cover today will be a little bit scary, but I also think hopefully you'll find very engaging. And as Ray talked about, we're going to give you some tactics so you can walk away today and make your target size smaller, because a lot of this really is in our control. We cannot stop a Equifax from getting breached, our Target or Home Depot. That's out of our control. How we respond to it, we can have some control. We'll talk about that briefly. But we're really going to talk about the things we can do immediately. I'm not really a tech guy. A lot of people, when they hear you speak on this subject, assume that that I am. I'm really not. We're not going to be talking about firewalls and different pieces of software to download. We're really going to be talking about what can we do behaviorally to make ourselves a smaller target. And just to give you some perspective, because some of you on this call might be thinking, you know, I'm just not good at this stuff. I don't know a lot about technology. You know, that's okay. I'm going to set the bar very low for you in this area. Let's see here. Why are my slides on advanced? Hold on 1 second here. My laptop's unplugged somehow. Okay, hold on 1 second here. I've got something is not plugged right. There we go. Okay. So Ray mentioned in previous role, I worked at the Sporting News magazine, but this is back in the early 90s. The Sporting News was based here in St. Louis, and we were trying to get an NFL team at the time. So those of you that are football fans, a little bit older, might remember the Cardinals were a football team that played in St. Louis. They moved out to Arizona. We were trying to get an expansion team. When I was at the Sport News, the fax machine was still a big piece of communication, right? So we did not have a good fax machine. So I got to become best friends with the fax machine repair guy because he was in our office pretty much every week. His name was Frank. We're still good friends to this day. I've known him now for almost 30 years. We exchanged Christmas cards. I usually see him a couple times a year. And one day Frank comes into the office to fix our fax machine as he normally does. And I said, hey, what's going on? He said, I've got some bad news, man. He goes, we're not getting an NFL team. I'm like, he's usually a pretty upbeat guy. I'm like, well, what makes you say that? He goes, well, I just got back from the prospective owner's headquarters downtown. And what happened was they had called Frank and they said, we need you to come down right away. We've got to get this fax into the league office. And there's a tight deadline and our normal admin is not here. This is the owner, the prospective owner calling. So this guy was really going to own an NFL team. Keep that in mind as we tell this story. He says, I need you to get down here immediately. I've got to get this fax in the league office. So Frank rushes down there, gets there, and the guy has an 80-page fax he needs to send. All this paperwork, application, things like that. He goes, all right, what's going on? He goes, well, every time I try to send it, it won't go through. He goes, all right, well, let's look at your machine. Everything looks okay to me. Let me try to send it, give me the number. Frank hits send, the fax starts sending. And as the first page goes through, the guy says, see, it won't work. The paper keeps coming back out. It's not going to the league office. And Frank realizes that this guy literally thought that somehow the paper magically went through this wire and disappeared and wound up near a spot. And Frank says, well, let me ask you, how many times have you tried to send this fax today? He goes, I've sent it at least 50 times and tried to, it's never gone through. So the league office at the NFL received 4,000 pieces of paper from this guy over the course of the day. And we didn't get an expansion team. We wound up getting the Rams versus an expansion team. And I am convinced to this day, it was because this guy did not know how to interact with something. Doesn't matter. I don't know how fax machines work myself, by the way, but how we behaviorally interact with it can be very important. And that's what we're going to focus on here. So even if you think your level of technology is low, remember, guy that was going on an NFL team thought paper magically disappeared in a fax machine. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is who are the targets for identity theft and cyber fraud. And depending on your point of view here, the good news or bad news is it's not you. You're not the number one target, those of you on this call. The bad news is it's probably someone you really care about. It is your child, your grandchild, a niece, a nephew, etc. Kids are the number one target for identity theft. And the reason they are is because they have something that a lot of adults do not have, that cyber criminals love to get a hold of. They have perfectly pristine credit, right? And typically we're not checking it. Why would I be checking my kid's credit? He's not using, he doesn't have any credit. There's nothing, should be nothing to check. And the cyber criminals are counting on that. The second piece of this is if a fraudster can get a hold of a child's social security number and it's never been used, when they go to use it for the first time, the only thing the creditor can confirm is this a valid social security number? A creditor cannot look at a number and tell, is this belong to a 77-year-old or does this belong to a 7-month-old? They have no way of knowing. They can only confirm it is valid. The date that is associated with that social security number is the date it was issued, not the date of birth. And the age associated with it actually ends up being the first person to use it. So suddenly, 4-month-old Archie can become 45-year-old Jeff, okay? So this is a real danger and it can have a big impact on kids. There are some things you can look for that are big signs that something has happened. And a lot of what we're gonna cover today, we're gonna send you in a follow-up email. So if you brought a notepad with you, while you're welcome to jot some things down, we will send information out to you, especially when we get into some specific steps or a web address you may want to go visit. So don't feel that you need to take a ton of notes, and hopefully you can just kind of soak some of this in mentally. The biggest sign that your child's identity has been stolen is they start getting credit card offers in the mail. So at first it might seem cute that 1-year-old Danny's getting his first Visa card offer, but actually it's a bad sign. It probably means that someone has opened up credit in Danny's name, a fraudster, and then that information gets shared with other companies. And then more people want Danny to get more credit, of course. So that's why he's receiving those offers. Another sign could be you get a notice from the IRS that Susie has already filed her taxes, okay? Or she's on another return. A job verification call, a debt collection agency calls, and they want to know why Sam has not, he owes X amount of money, but Sam is 6 months old, okay? These are all signs that something bad is happening. There are some different things you can do to try to either prevent this or find out if something's going on. One of the biggest ones you can do is try to see if you can get a credit record for your child. You need to do it through all 3 agencies, and we'll send out instructions on how to do this and some other things. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. When you go to get a credit report for your child, you should get nothing back, nothing. If you get a report back with their credit, even if they've got a great credit score, that's a bad thing because that means somebody has opened up credit in their name. When we used to share this tip, first couple of times I did, people would get up and leave the presentation. We usually do this in person, and I was a little bit of an ego. I was kind of, wow, they're already bored. They left because they were going to call their spouse because they knew exactly this is exactly what was happening to them. You can do things such as lock up their social security card. We get that little blue card, but if you keep that in your wallet or purse and that gets stolen, then their identity could be stolen. I'd also be very careful about giving their information out, their social security number, because this is kind of the key to getting their identity. When I went to register my niece for softball last summer, my sister said, "Can you get her registered?" I said, "Sure." She and I go up to register. I'm filling out a form. It's her name, it's her address, it's her age, her favorite uniform number, her favorite position that she wants to play, her social security number. I left that line blank. When I turned in the form to the guy, I said, "Hey, I'm going to leave this part blank. Is there a reason you guys need her social?" He said, "No, I don't know. We got this form online." So they didn't even know why they were asking for it, okay? So be reluctant to give that out. Very typically, it is not needed. One of the biggest things you can also do, however, is get a freeze on your child's credit. This is one of the silver linings on Equifax, okay? prior to September 2018, some states you could not freeze your child's credit. I know here in Missouri, where I live, that was not even an option. But now you can do it in all 50 states, and there's no cost to it. So what happens is you put a freeze in your child's credit as soon as you're able to, when they get their social. And then when they become the age of adult in that state, that freeze is going to expire. But then that child / now adult has the option to do a freeze on their own behalf. And I think this is the best weapon you have, because if their social gets stolen and someone tries to open up credit in their name, they're not going to be able to. And I didn't realize how severe this issue was. I was doing a client event a few years ago, and after the event was over, this couple came up to me and they said, hey, we appreciate the information, but you should really look into this more. Because I used to spend maybe a minute on this subject. They go, our son had his identity stolen when he was probably 1 or 2. We didn't know it. And when he turned 16, he went to buy a car. And like all teenagers, credit card companies love teenagers, right? He goes to get his first credit card. Nope, got denied. And the reason he got denied was he had $800,000 of debt in his name across 28 credit cards. Okay, so someone got a hold of it. They were using it, abusing it, and they had no idea. And it took about 2 years, they said, to untangle all of that. And if this happens to a child when they go to turn an adult and they're applying for college loans, they're applying for jobs, credit cards, it can have a big impact on what happens to them. So this is an area where you really, I think we have to protect our kids in this space. There's a lot of dangers when we talk about children on the internet, obviously, but this is actually one of the biggest ones because this is who they target the most. Okay. The number 2 target, which is bad news for all of us, is adults. Why adults? Taxes. They love US taxpayers, right? We all pay taxes. This is a prime source of fraud. Some of you who are watching this have probably been a victim of this. There's not a lot of great options here. The IRS says, well, the way to get around this is file your taxes in January. For a lot of folks, that is not a great option. And the reason that they go after this, one, they're after money. So they're going to file for a refund on your behalf. They're going to file in January. They're going to file electronically. The IRS is getting better at catching this, but they're catching it on day like 60 or day 90. When they file electronically, they have to pay that refund out in 30 days. So the refund gets paid to the fraudster and they catch it. So it's a pay first, ask questions later system. If you were owed a refund, you will get your refund, but it takes up to a year sometimes. A couple of things to remember in this space. One is the IRS is never going to call you, text you, or email you. And these are the methods that the fraudsters are still using to get information for people's taxes, which is not that difficult because to file a tax return, you need a name, an address, date of birth. Those are not that hard to get, and a social security number. So that's why some of these big data breaches like the Anthem breach, the Equifax breach are so dangerous in this space, because if they can get that social, they can do a lot of damage with it. A lot of these phone calls we see they tend to be very threatening. You're going to be arrested if you don't do X. And for whatever reason, the IRS cops are 40 minutes away. So they don't want you to have time to think about this. You've got to act right now. Text messages, emails. I'll show you an example of one. Here's an email somebody received saying that they can avoid a surprise year-end tax bill by updating some information. Click on this link. They're going to go to that link. They're going to go to a fake website, and they're going to provide information they think to the IRS, but in reality, they're providing the fraudster information so they can file a return on their behalf. Here's another one for convenience. We're going to give you a refund on your Visa or MasterCard now. Fill in this information. You're handing your credit card or debit card information over. Here's one, this one I found slightly humorous, where the person's being told they're getting a $10,000 refund, but if they don't give the IRS everything that the IRS needs to give them $10,000, they're going to jail, okay? I don't think the IRS is that desperate to hand out our refunds, okay? So just keep that in mind. If you've ever been a victim of ID theft and tax fraud, you do have the option of getting a special PIN. It's called an IP, Identity Protection PIN number. that you use in future years to file your taxes. There's always a gotcha, right? The only gotcha to this is, in order to get this, you have to not only be a victim of identity theft, you have to already have been a victim of tax fraud to get this. Now, there are some exceptions happening for this. Georgia and Florida and Washington, D.C., this is so rampant that anybody can get this 6-digit PIN. And this is a program they're talking about expanding. Another good resource, I do believe, is through the Federal Trade Commission, which is identitytheft.gov. If you're a victim of identity theft, this site will walk you through step by step how to go about recovering your identity. It will generate forms for you. It will tell you where you need to send these forms and some of the various steps. Again, we'll send this website and some of this other information out to you in a follow-up email. Okay, so we talked about who are the targets, right? It's kids and US taxpayers. That's a wide blanket coverage. Next, we're going to talk about the part of the presentation that I think is the most interesting and also the most scary. Okay, what happens to your identity once it's stolen? And if we were in a room together right now, I'd be asking all of you, what do you think your identity is worth? And it's always fascinating to hear answers. Sometimes somebody will say $1, which I think is always a little depressing, right? I'd like to believe we're worth more than that. All the way up to, I'll hear some people say, I'm worth $1 million. Okay. Unfortunately, the person that would have said 1 is a lot closer. The average identity on the dark web sells for $12. Okay. Or a case of Old Milwaukee. As a beer drinker, although not a real fancy one, my drink of choice is probably Bud Light and Busch Light. It's still a little insulting, right? Okay, but that's what we're worth. And it's not that there is not a lot of demand for these identities. There is, but there is so much supply out there right now through a lot of these big, huge data breaches. Okay. So I mentioned the dark web. What is the dark web? I think a lot of us have heard of it through name, but what exactly is it? And at the beginning, Ray mentioned that I'm part of an organization called Infragard. It's a partnership with the FBI. When I applied for this, I really didn't know how this was going to go. I was kind of excited to learn more about this stuff because we were seeing some of our clients fall victim to these types of scams, and I wanted to learn more about it. I thought I was going to fill out a 1-page application and I'd get accepted and I'd get some newsletters. Well, it was a 20-page application and they spent 4 months vetting me, okay? Which is a little nerve-wracking when the FBI is looking at you. And I went to school at Indiana University and I had some pretty wild days back then. I thought, wow, I wonder if I'm even going to get into this organization. But I did, and it's been extremely informative because they do share a lot of information and it allows me to get to interact with other business leaders, both in St. Louis and throughout the nation, to understand what are they seeing, what are they doing. So one night, the St. Louis chapter, we had an FBI agent come and speak to us, and he took us out on the dark web. And that's what I'm going to show you tonight is what is the dark web and what does it look like? But the very first question that we asked was this. If you guys know what the dark web is, why don't you just shut it down, right? I didn't ask the question, but I thought that's a logical question, right? And the reason is because the dark web is fully encrypted, and most of these sites that are out there, they don't even know where they're originating from. Is it illegal to go on the dark web? The answer is no, it is not. Now, what you do on the dark web might be illegal if you're selling something or if you're buying something illegally, but going out there is not illegal. And can any of us go out there? The answer is yes, any of us can go out there. It's a little tricky. You have to have a special type of a browser called TOR. And what's tough about the dark web is once you get out there, it's not searchable. So it's not like what we're used to. And think of the tip of the iceberg is what we're used to, the World Wide Web, right? If I want to see the Minnesota Twins opening day lineup, I'm going to go on ESPN.com and I'm going to find it out. I don't have to log in to find this information out. It's searchable. If I want to see, hey, what's the weather forecast going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be sunny or rainy? I go to weather.com, right? Maybe I want to read some basic news about what's happening in the world. I may go to foxnews.com. I may go to CNN.com, okay? That's the World Wide Web. We go out there all the time. But below the World Wide Web is a whole nother layer of the internet. It's actually much bigger, called the deep web. The deep web are also sites we go to all the time. The difference is these sites require a username and password. It could be our banking site. Maybe the doctor you work with, he or she has a medical portal that you sign into to get medical reports. Could be your work site has a special login that employees go to find information. These sites require a login. And the content on those sites is not going to be searchable to the broader internet audience. And then below the deep web is kind of the dark underbelly of all of this, and that is the dark web. And this is where illegal activity is typically happening. This involves things such as drug trafficking, child pornography, and the sale of stolen identities, stolen data, and illegal services. So we're going to take you out there and show you what this looks like. These are some of the screenshots I was able to get from the FBI agent and some of the things that we got to see. So here's a site, it's a dark, they call them a dark web marketplace, that is selling, to me, this looks a lot like eBay kind of, right? But instead of buying maybe a kitchen table or a bicycle or a book, I am buying somebody's social security number. I am buying their banking information. And you can see some of these, the price little as $1. And if you look at the views on these, 4,800 views, 15,000 views. So there's not just a few 100,000 people out on the dark web. There are millions of people out on the dark web looking at this stuff. Here's a site that specializes in selling ATM skimmers. These are devices that bad guys will put on ATM machines to capture your data. They may put a keypad over another keypad, or some kind of device that goes over the credit card or your bank card where you insert it. A device goes over that, they capture that data, okay? They're selling these devices to people so they can use. Here's a site that sells stolen credit cards. So if I get pickpocketed walking down the street, whoever takes my credit card has it in their physical possession, and they're gonna try to use it as quickly as possible. In this case though, they're not really selling the physical cards, they're selling the data behind it that allows them to use it, like the credit card number, the expiration date, that little 3-digit code on the back. And the way this works is, I'm the bad guy, I'm gonna sell this MasterCard for $40, okay? And then I'm gonna take that $40 that I've made from selling the MasterCard, I'm gonna use that to buy an American Express gift card. I'm gonna use that $40 American Express gift card and buy a $40 Best Buy gift card. And I'm gonna use that and get enough of those Best Buy gift cards that I can buy a nice, big 4K, 80-foot, 80-inch TV, and I'm gonna sell that on Craigslist legally, well, for a profit, okay? And all this, again, is encrypted and there's no audit trail for this stuff. Here's a site that sells stolen Yahoo accounts. So Yahoo's had been in the news for the wrong reasons, right? They've had some big data breaches, okay? So whenever you read about one of these, I would always recommend going in and updating your password, because you may log in a couple days later, and if you look at your account, everything may look fine, and maybe it is fine at that point. But that account could get sold on the dark web maybe a month later, a week later, maybe 2 years later in some cases. And if you have not updated your password, they're going to be able to go right in. I know this slide's a little blurry, but you can kind of see that a lot of this stuff is sold in Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin? Because it's anonymous. That's what fraudsters love about it. And you can also see down here, there's a feedback tab. So they will leave feedback for each other. I bought these 5 stolen passwords and they work perfectly. I highly recommend this seller, okay? There's some other sites out there too. It's not all this stuff. Here's a site that was pretty famous. It was called Silk Road. The CIA was able to shut this site down. This is a site that specialized in the selling of drugs and drug paraphernalia. They were able to get an agent hired there as a web developer, and he worked there for 6 months, and during that time was able to gather up enough evidence, and they were able to shut them down. Here's a site that sells firearms, and not just firearms that a lot of us may own, such as a hunting rifle or a handgun, but talking military grade weapons, okay? I know Father's Day just happened. This is one of the weirder things we got to see. Here's a site that sells a do-it-yourself vasectomy kit. Maybe for next year, if dad doesn't have everything, you can go this route. So there's some weird stuff out there, okay? But the other big thing that's happened out here is they're selling services, okay? And they're running this like a true marketplace. In fact, companies like Google and Amazon and eBay are taking business practices from the dark web because they're very good at what they do. That might include things like offering 100% satisfaction guarantee. So how can they do this? Well, one, if I buy a stolen credit card on the dark web and I go to use it and it doesn't work, what am I going to do? I'm not going to call the police, right? But in reality, it probably is going to work. And if it doesn't, they're probably going to give me my money back because they don't want to have a quote bad reputation on the dark web. Because if people stop buying from them, and you saw how people can leave feedback, their site will go out of business. You'll see things like 24/7 customer support. I can't get that from my cable company today, but I could get it on the dark web. They'll do free trials. Hey, you want me to hack 10,000 work accounts at this company? I'll do the first 10 for free to prove to you that we know what we're doing. And it's so upside down, but you'll even see words like this: honesty and integrity. We're hackers you can trust to do the wrong thing. We hire the best people. We have an incredible skill set. You should work with us. Okay? As I mentioned earlier, I'm not technical. Okay, I don't know how to program code and things like that, but I can go on the dark web and I can buy services. So let's say I want to, maybe do a ransomware attack on Ray. Okay, I can buy that for $120 and have his computer infected where he has to pay a ransom to me. Or maybe Catherine, someone in Ray's office. Maybe I want to do a denial of service attack. Maybe she's got a website where she sells some stuff. I can say for $60, $100 rather, I can shut that site down. Or maybe Cooper, who works there as well. I want to get into his bank account for an average of $60. That's all it costs me to get access to that. And someone will do it for me because I don't know how to do it. Okay. So who are these bad guys, right? Who are these people? When I think about villains, this is what I think of, okay? Villains wear masks, right? They're typically enshrouded in black, they're just evil looking. I'm a Cardinals fan from St. Louis. To me, they might even be, someone who plays for the Cubs. Last year, I thought, well, maybe they're the Astros, right? But these are what cyber criminals actually look like. These people right here, these are pictures of actual cyber criminals. And I think these people look like someone I may work with, someone I may see walking down the street, somebody I may live next door to. It's not that classic image we have of some nerdy guy huddled in his parents' basement, with an 80-ounce Diet Coke and, no friends, anything like that. These are very social people. They're great at what they do. They're playing right now at a Hall of Fame level. And law enforcement is trying to catch up, but it's difficult. I think law enforcement has gone from the high school level to maybe like AA, okay? But these folks are Hall of Famers, okay? Law enforcement is trying to fight back. It's tough because the methods keep evolving. If you have a kid or know of someone who's getting ready to go to college and they have interest in this kind of area, I'd highly, highly encourage them to go into cybersecurity. The average starting salary right now out of college for someone that majors in this is $200,000 a year. And they're estimating there's going to be 3 million unfulfilled jobs by the year 2021. Okay, so it's the CIA's hiring, the FBI, the police, large companies are hiring people to help train them how to train their employees and how to fight back. But it's really difficult. So we talked about the targets. We talked about what actually happens. Now I want to kind of show you what can you do about it? What do you have in your control today that you can take to fight back? And the biggest thing you have, all of you brought with you today, and that is your gut instincts and your brain. These are your two biggest defenses, because the number one method being used by cyber criminals is what we call social engineering. And this is where they get us to use our own behaviors against us. So for example, if I saw Ray walking down the street and we didn't know each other, and I walked up to Ray and I said, hey, Ray, can I have your username and password? And he's going to say no, or maybe something even a little more, a little more aggressive, right? Of course, he's not going to give that to me. But what if you were sitting in you started a new job and the phone rings and it says, Jared Hoffman, IT. And you pick up the phone. I said, hey, I know it's your first week here, but I need your help. Someone's trying to breach our systems. I got to get into your account right away to stop it. Would you give me your username and password? I think there's a good chance you would. or you certainly would think about it, because I put you in a totally different circumstance. I'm saying you don't have time to think about this. I'm preying upon your loyalty to the company. This is serious. The company could be ruined. So I'm putting anxiousness, anxiety, loyalty, all against you. And that's what these people do. They use our own emotions against us to get us to do things we normally would never do, such as hand out private information. So what I'm going to walk you through now are the methods that they use so you can actually recognize these. And some of these you're probably going to recognize, because if you can recognize these and not take action, you've just shrunk your target size way down. So what are the most common method they use, and a lot of us I think have heard this term, is called phishing. And this is when social engineering is done via email. This is still the most popular method because an email can go out to 100,000 people. And if even only, let's say 5 or 10% bite on it, it's a real successful day, okay? So I'm going to show you some actual examples that I've received or people I know have received and forwarded on to me. So here's an example where I use PayPal. A lot of people use PayPal now, or maybe use Venmo to pay for things. And they're using social engineering against me because right off the bat, they're telling me, hey, your account has been suspended. Well, if I use PayPal to pay for almost everything, this is going to create a little bit of anxiety for me, okay? Oh my gosh, I've got to get my account fixed, okay? Now, there's a couple what I would call grammatical errors here. It says, we need to update your informations for further use instead of information. There's no period after temporarily. Bad grammar can always be a sign that something is not legitimate. However, I think that they're spending their profits on proofreaders because lately, a lot of these phishing emails I've seen, the language and the grammar is perfect. So they've really improved in this area. So what they want me to do here, though, is I can get this fixed, which is nice. Click on update my information. I'm going to click that button. I'm going to go to a site that looks just like PayPal. I'm going to update my information. But in reality, I've just given my account was never locked in the first place. And now I've handed my credentials over to the fraudster. Okay, so here they used a little bit of anxiety against us. Here's one. Sometimes they use happiness and excitement. A buddy of mine here in St. Louis sent this over to me. He's a professor at St. Louis University. It's a small Jesuit college downtown, and said, hey, I got this. You can use this for your presentation. I'm like, great. How did you know this was fake? Was it the email address? He says, no. I said, that logo looks weird. He goes, no, that logo is actually, it's an alternate logo, but it's correct. I'm like, well, what made you realize this was not real? He goes, well, it's telling me that I'm due a 12.5% raise, and I'm a very mediocre professor. And there is no way I was getting that big of a raise. And he is. I've sat in his classes a couple times. He is he's pretty average, okay? So I'd say that if he was here. But here they wanted him to get excited, right? And fortunately, he knew that it wasn't really accurate. And to get that raise, just click on this link. And had he done that, probably would have launched a virus, maybe would have had him fill out some documents where he had to give up his social, things like that. Here's one that I received. So at Buckingham Strategic Partners, we have software that looks at every single email that comes in, whether it's from a client, a vendor, a stranger, anyone. And it looks for any kind of a virus. And if there is a virus, I don't even get a chance to click on it, right? They don't trust us appropriately. It goes to our IT team. But I did receive this one, and it worked perfectly because it got my attention, right? I have one credit card. I have a Visa Southwest Chase Visa Southwest card. And it tells me that my account is being discontinued and urgent action is required. A lot of these phishing emails will always use words like that: urgent action, immediate, prompt attention, because they don't want you to stop and think about it too long. Because typically when we do, we realize this isn't right, something's not right here. But if we can act right away, that's where they can get us. So those words kind of clued me that something was off here. But then I also started hovering over some of these links. I noticed like Chase.com, it wasn't even a web link. And some of them I could see where they were taking me. So one thing to remember, when you open up an email and you see a web link, you can hover over it and find out, where am I actually going? Because a web link can say anything. A web link could say usbank.com, but it could take you somewhere entirely different. So be very weary of web links and emails unless you truly know the person. because those are dangerous. I typically will open up another browser, and if it wants me to go, let's say, to Schwab or Fidelity.com, I will enter in the address that I have bookmarked or that I know it to be, rather than trust something in an email. And I don't, is that being paranoid? I don't think it is. I think it's just being careful. And these emails are really getting really good. Here's one that I've seen as well, where you may, especially in this environment now, we're all working from home, where you'll get an email that looks like it's from your boss, okay, wanting you to take action on something. And usually they're not available by phone, because again, they don't want you to actually call, because when you call, Paul Snow, he's going to be like, I didn't send that. So he's in the middle of the meeting. Okay, here's an example of spear phishing. Spear phishing is when they go after a very specific individual. A lot of times it's a CEO or someone who has access to money. It could be the chief financial officer of a company. In this case, this is the email that Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta, received. And this is how the Democrats, the DNC was hacked, about 4 years ago by Russia. Super low tech. John Podesta received this email saying, hey, someone's tried to sign into your Google account from the Ukraine. They actually used cybersecurity against him. Hey, we're trying to warn you here. If you look at the email here, looks pretty legit. The grammar's fine. The Google logo is correct. So he clicked on change password. They said, put in your old password, just like we do when we change our passwords. Put in your new password. And he gave his credentials to Russia. And then they went into his account and they updated his credentials to the new ones that he just put in. So he had no idea that for 6 months they were sitting in his email collecting information. So it wasn't like from a James Bond movie where they're beaming a satellite into space and pulling his data out. They literally got him to do it for them. Super low tech. All they had to do was create an email and build a 2-page website. Super easy. Okay, there's other methods too. Smishing. This is when they do it via text or simple messaging. I kind of work on the operations side of financial services since I joined Buckingham, so I've never been an actual advisor, but I have learned, do not do business with banks that cannot find your account number. That is a bad bank, okay? Although this one does have some extremely friendly hours that open up even at 3:25 a.m. You can contact them apparently. This is a pretty weak attempt, okay? However, could this work? Sure, someone gets a text in the middle of the night and they're kind of groggy and they've got to get to the bank in the morning. Oh, they can't find my number. Oh, I better get it over to them. Fairly weak. Some of these are pretty clever. Here's one that I received recently. I'm winning a $1,000 Walmart gift card. Okay, that's pretty awesome. Except why am I receiving this? I didn't enter any contest. So I'm sure some of you received similar things like this, where you've won a lottery, a drawing, a gift card, etc. Ask yourself, what did I actually enter to receive this? If it's nothing, you can count on this being nothing. So I didn't click on this link. Had I done that, it probably would have launched a virus or, again, taken me to a fake website. This one, I speak in this all the time, and this is why this can happen to anybody, because despite me trying to provide you education, I have to remind myself sometimes, because I almost fell for this. I was out on a date one night and I get this message on my phone. Holy cow, I've got $175 going on Venmo. I didn't authorize that. I'm going to go and cancel that. And then I realized, wait a minute, Venmo never texts me. Everything's through the app. Why am I getting this? But I came so close to clicking on that. Again, they use social engineering though. It got my attention. I don't want to lose $175. I need to stop that now. And came very close to working. Here's a much better attempt. This is using texting and voice, which they call Vishing, like phone calls. So this one I think is much better than the one where they couldn't find my account number. Someone got this message from Wells Fargo that their account has been locked. So there's social engineering being used. That's going to set in a little bit of panic and anxiety. Call this number. I'm going to call this number and Jeff's going to answer. Hi, this is Jeff at Wells Fargo. How may I help you? Oh, you received a text about your account number being locked. Yes, we did send that. Let me help you with this. Can I please have your account number to unlock it? I'm going to hear typing in the background. Next thing I know, hi, it's been unlocked. Anything else I can do to help you today? Nope, I'm good. I go into my Wells Fargo account to make sure it's not working, and it is. but it was never locked in the first place. Okay, super effective. I know some of you have seen these pop-ups or you've received phone calls that your computer has a virus. Okay, my mom is extremely low tech, is about as low, I would put her up against anybody on the planet. I went to my parents' house one night for dinner, and my dad said, well, your mom got a call today that Microsoft was calling to fix the computer. And I'm like, oh, because I know there's no way. I used to have to work with Microsoft when I helped run our IT department. And I can guarantee you, Microsoft is never, ever, ever going to call you. Even when you need them to call you, they're not going to return your calls, okay? We have trouble tickets that have been open for 8 years. They have never called us back on. It's not going to happen. And they got my mom on the phone and they told her the computer had a virus and she doesn't know how to fix anything. So she was grateful. Oh, they're calling to help me. They told her to get on the desktop and find this file. And my dad said my mom was literally on the desk looking for this file. And she had these people on the phone for 2 hours before they finally just gave up trying to get my mom to do stuff. Because although it wasn't purposeful, she really was of no assistance to them whatsoever. And she kind of, I think in a way, kind of punked them a little bit, but probably not intentionally. So that's one method, but the real method I would use, just hang up. No one knows if your computer has a virus. And this is a very common effective method that we see all the time. So how effective is this? So here's an example of this. This guy was arrested in Minneapolis 2 summers ago. He had collected, posing as an IRS agent, okay, $224,000 worth of Target gift cards. So you're probably wondering, well, why would anybody pay an IRS agent in a Target gift card? And here's an example of this. We have a client this happened to. She went to Yale, graduated from Yale, super smart. She owned her own business successfully. That is not easy to do. If any of you on this call are a business owner, you know how difficult that is. So super successful, super smart. She was married. She had 2 kids. She gets a call one night from the IRS saying, you've got a major problem and you're going to be going to jail. We're sending cops on the way to your house right now. And unless you get this taken care of, you're facing 2 to 4 years in prison. Of course, that's going to get anyone's attention, right? She goes, all right, let me go get my tax paperwork. I don't know what could be going on here. That could be, we could have messed up. And I can call you back. What's the number? They go, no, if you hang up the phone, the deal is going to be off the table. They eventually got her to get into her car, drive to an ATM, withdraw $1,000, and buy 2 iTunes gift cards, $500 each. And she read off the number to the first one, to the quote IRS agent. And then she said, she was talking to the advisor about it. She said, then I just stopped. And I realized, what in the hell am I doing? And she said, I was so embarrassed. And we were talking about this in an event, and some guy raised his hand. He goes, well, how could she be that dumb? And my reply to that is, change that from how could she be that dumb to how could she be that scared? And then you absolutely understand how anybody could do that. Because she was not dumb, she was scared. They put her in a super vulnerable position with no time to think. And in fact, as she had to find that second card, that's when she had that split second and her mind stopped racing and she realized it wasn't real. So again, this stuff can happen to anyone. And this method of using our emotions against us is very powerful. So we're gonna do a little exercise here. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is kind of crazy. It's very interesting though. There's a theory by some people that there is an alternate universe. And this effect got named after Nelson Mandela because researchers surveyed people about what happened to Nelson Mandela. Who was he? And about 70% said that Nelson Mandela went to prison in South Africa during apartheid and died there a hero. When in reality, he did go to prison, but he eventually was released and became president of South Africa. Some people believe that absolutely did not happen, and there's a rip in the space-time continuum, and we've lived in alternate universes. I don't believe that part. If you want to read about it, just Google search Mandela effect. You can read all the theories. I think what Mandela effect is, however, is an extremely effective way to show how our eyes and ears cannot always be trusted, and our mind can play tricks on us. So here's an example of this. This is a scene from the movie Snow White. I think we've all probably seen this famous scene. And if I asked you, what does the queen, evil queen, say to the mirror? I think almost all of us, including myself, would answer mirror, mirror on the wall, okay? But that's actually incorrect. If you go back and watch the movie, see it on Disney Plus now, it's magic mirror on the wall, okay? So I'm gonna see how you guys can do with this. If we were together, we'd actually be all standing up right now and I'd have you sit down as soon as you missed one. But I'm gonna make this a little easier. I'm gonna give you a 50-50 shot on these. I'm gonna show you some very famous logos. If you wanna share your answer, you can type it into the chat and you can kind of show people what you think the right answer is. And the differences are not going to be like, these are not tricks where something's off by like 1 degree, okay? So here's the first example. Top 3 selling candy bar in the United States, Kit Kat. We see these all the time. It's one of my favorites. Is Kit Kat hyphenated, the hyphen, or is Kit Kat not hyphenated? What do you think the right answer is if you saw this? Is it 1 or 2? One of these, again, is fake, okay? Well, if you said number 1, you'd be wrong. Kit Kat is not hyphenated, okay? I added this one recently. I may remove it because everyone keeps getting it wrong. We did an event with 100 people and 92 missed it. And I had it, unfortunately, it's the first question, so I wiped out the whole room. Ford logo, we see this all the time. Does the F on Ford, does it have that little curly Q? Or does the F on the Ford have a straight line through the F? Okay, which one is it? It's number 1, and most people find this impossible to believe. I think this is classic Mandela effect. I think we associate Ford with big, tough macho, and the idea that there's a little cute pigtail on the F is just incomprehensible. But check out your Ford or your neighbor's Ford, and you'll see that's exactly what it is. I bet a lot of us are eating these right now during this quarantine environment, right? Cheez-Its. But is it Cheez-Its or is it Cheez-It? What do you actually buy at the store? Cheez-It. Here's another one that I missed. Monopoly. This is the greatest and worst board game of all time, right? More family fights have been created over Monopoly. Rich Uncle Pennybags. Number 1, does he not have a monocle? Or number 2, does he have a monocle? Okay. And much to people's surprise, he does not have a monocle. Okay. Last one. If you've gone 4 out of 4 so far, you're killing it because by now most people have already sat down. The Flintstones, great classic cartoon show, right? Is it the Flintstones, F-L-I-N-S-T-O-N-E-S, or is it the Flintstones, F-L-I-N-T-S-T-O-N-E-S? 1 or 2? Which is the correct one? Correct answer is number 2. I think a lot of us say Flintstones because when we sing the song, it comes out Flintstones, Meet the Flintstones, but it is Flintstones, okay? Now, I believe in second chances, all right? And we've been streaming tons of movies, so I'll give you one more example of this, okay? 3 famous movie scenes in a famous TV show. Empire Strikes Back. If you had to fill in the blanks here, could you do this correctly? What does Darth Vader say to Luke Skywalker in this very famous scene? Okay, what do you think the word is? If you said Luke, which most people will say, that is incorrect. It is "No, I am your father." Field of Dreams, great baseball movie. If you build it, blank will come. What's the right answer? Most people say they, but if you watch the movie, it's he. And this is top 3 movie for me, movie Jaws. Blank, gonna need a bigger boat. And as many times as I've seen it, when I took this quiz, I answered it incorrectly. I said we're. I said, we're gonna need a bigger boat. It's you're gonna need a bigger boat. And Mr. Rogers, there was the Tom Hanks movie. And if you haven't seen a documentary about Fred Rogers that was a few months before that, I highly recommend that. It's a Beautiful Day in blank neighborhood. This, most people say the or my, okay? So what's the point of this exercise? Why are we watching logos and trying to get movie quotes correct? Because if we cannot recognize these things that we see every day, all the time, how are we going to recognize fake websites? Because that's when most people will argue. I will know a fake website when I see it. I would argue you will not. And that's why I don't trust links in emails unless I truly know the sender. Because these fake websites, there will probably be some differences. They're not going to get it exact, but they don't need to, because they know salt can look just like sugar, and we can't always trust our eyes, but we often do. So take time to think, trust your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, don't trust it. Open up a new browser, go to the site that you know it to be. Okay, your other big defense here, and it's one that's probably going to make us all go, because this is tough, is having a strong password, okay? I think of the fraudsters, they're the big bad wolf. If we have very weak passwords, or if we use the same password all the time, our house is made of straw. They are going to blow right through, and they're going to get your password without much difficulty. But if you've got a really strong password, or you're using a strong passphrase, you've got the brick house, they're going to move on. They don't have time for you. These folks are about volume, and they're not going to bother. They're going to move past you and on to the other strong wood houses. Okay. A lot of people think they have good passwords. I kind of like this little cartoon here, but a lot of times we make them too basic. We use our name, we use our address. We use the same password over and over. Therefore, if it gets compromised once, it could be used in other places. So what I would recommend, well, one, here's the most common passwords from last year. Hopefully you do not recognize your password on this list. And the reason these are the most common ones is because they're the easiest ones to type, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Password, test. I love you, 11111, right? These passwords are still used all the time by people. So fraudsters have software that can just randomly type in passwords, and they're certainly going to try these. And if you have one of these, they're going to log right in. Okay. Here's a cool site we'll send you. It's a one-page website. I like it. I use it when I think of trying to come up with a password. It's called howsecuresmypassword.net. And what this site allows you to do is just enter in a word. It could be a password that you're using. You're not going to put in the site or your username. Could be a word or phrase you're thinking of using. Okay. So I tried putting in the word password to see how secure is. That's what this site will tell you is how long would it take a fraudster to crack your password. If you use the word password, it would be cracked instantly. I've seen answers that are literally milliseconds. Okay. This is not even a millisecond. It would get in right away. Okay, I know a lot of you are near the Richmond area, so I thought, all right, Richmond Spiders. There's probably some Spiders fans on this call. I'm sure they're popular. Go Spiders with an exclamation point, so I have my symbol. You can see that would only take about 3 hours for someone to crack. That is not a strong password. So what I've started doing now is thinking about things that I love that are important to me and stringing them together. So I have a border terrier named Scout. This is a half dog, half devil animal at this point. She's 1.5 years old. Keeps me on my toes. I still love her though, Scout. I love to bass fish, one of my favorite hobbies, bass fishing. And my favorite Cardinal team of all time were the 85 Cardinals. So I think about how can I make this in a phrase that I can remember? Scout, bass, 85. That's going to take someone 3 million years to crack, according to how secure is my password. I will take my chances on that, okay? Here's a different example. I just created this. Let's see if I can even remember it, okay? I was thinking about Richmond, Virginia. And what are some cool things about Richmond? Because I've actually never been there before. And see if I can remember these. One was, you guys have rat basketball. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that Edgar Allan Poe was born in Richmond. And Richmond was founded, this is the part I got to think if I remember correctly. I think it was 1737. Okay, and then I strung these together. I think it's EAP. Yeah, here we go. EAP Rat BB 1737. So that's way more complex than what I currently have. Okay. So I took things that I think are interesting and make those into a very complex password. Now, what's tough about this method is I have probably 120 passwords, and I bet there's some of you that have more than that. I can do this 2 or 3 times, this method. I cannot use this method 120 times, okay? And when this call's over, by the way, I do want someone to help me understand what rat basketball is, because I was having a hard time getting some details on it. All right, so what I use is password management software, okay? I use Dashlane. I think these are all really good ones. They are all similar. I store my passwords in my password software. I often have Dashlane create passwords for me. Today, I know one password. I know my password to get into Dashlane. That's it. I don't know any other passwords. And what's helpful about this is I don't forget my passwords anymore. I'm not reusing the same passwords anymore, like I was falling into bad habits. I think the first question, and I think it's a fair question someone might have, is, well, what happens if Dashlane gets hacked? Well, I think it's anything's possible. I would never say never, but my passwords that I have stored in Dashlane are stored in an entirely separate server from the password I use to log in. And all my passwords are encrypted. And even if somebody got my password to Dashlane and then tried to log into Dashlane, they'd be logging in on a new device. So Dashlane is going to send a 4-digit code to my phone. So they'd have to have my password to log into my phone, my password to Dashlane. And then when they logged into here, I have a 4-digit code to Dashlane. And they literally have to have physical possession of my phone. So it's 2-factor authentication. I think that's highly unlikely. If you're like, for example, like storing your passwords on a Excel spreadsheet and password protecting that, while I think that's better than nothing, that's actually pretty easy to hack. If you Google search how to hack Excel passwords, you're going to get 3,000 results. So one of your takeaways today might be to consider doing some password management software. Most of these cost between $30 and $50 a year. And again, it has made my life so much simpler. We will send out information on these. Again, they're all similar. You may want to try one out for free to understand the bells and whistles. LastPass has a great feature where you can will your passwords. So I had an uncle who passed away a few years ago. He was awesome at his password management. Unfortunately, that meant we could not access anything. And even though he was dead, some of the institutions he worked with said, sorry, we can't give it to you. So it was a little bit of a nightmare as it turned out. Okay, another thing that I mentioned is 2-factor authentication. I highly, highly recommend this. 2-factor is where, in addition to a password, sometimes when you log in or if you go to change your password, it's going to send a 4-digit code to your phone. So I would recommend this for your bank accounts, for your custodial accounts. Most companies now have this feature, but it's not by default. So usually you have to go through your settings and say, I want 2-factor. I would do this for email accounts. I would do this for if you use Facebook or Instagram, sites like that. Highly recommend that. Also want to spend a little bit of time talking about COVID-19 because this has become a huge problem right now. And fraudsters love COVID. They're probably the only people in the world that do not. Why do they love? We talked about social engineering earlier. So in social engineering, you know, if I log into my email, I'm probably going to be in a pretty neutral state, right? I'm probably not all anxious. I'm probably not super excited. I'm checking my email. They need to get me excited or angry or scared for me to take action. But in this environment, those emotions already exist, right? Maybe we're worried we're going to get COVID or we have a family member that has it. Maybe we're worried about our job. Maybe we're frustrated that we're at home all the time and we just can't stand it and we're going a little cabin fever, right? All these emotions exist already. Now they just have to get us to act on them. So I'm going to show you some examples of what we're seeing out there in this space as we wrap up. Here's a very common scam. You're going to receive an email saying, find out who around you has COVID-19. Get a list of people. Find out in your neighborhood area who has this, okay? I know there are some probably legitimate apps out there, but there are very few. I would ignore this email. You also will see some of these emails will say they're coming from the World Health Organization or the CDC. These are great organizations to get your information from, but I would go to them. They are not emailing people with information. You need to go to their websites. Here's an example of this, right? Someone gets this email from the World Health Organization, find out the latest safety measures. They want you to click on that button. You're actually going to download a virus probably. Here's, again, this can be done via text. I don't know what warning level 3 is, but it doesn't sound good, right? And it sounds pretty serious. They want me to click on that to get information, okay? I can get a dosage reserve. That's another common scam right now. Be the first one to sign up for a vaccine. Sometimes they want you to pay for that. These are scams, so stay away from these. Sometimes they're preying upon, you can work for a charitable organization, donate money to victims of COVID, or donate money to first responders. Or, hey, we know it's been tough out there. Here's a fake page for Walmart set up on Facebook. Type in thanks to the comment. We're going to give away 100 gift certificates. I type in thanks. Sure enough, turns out I won a shopping spree. I need to validate my entry. I'm going to click validate entry. I'm going to be taken to this site that I'm going to go through a series of questions, including giving up personal information to get my $250 Walmart card. But this whole thing is fake, okay? Very effective. Again, a lot of us are working from home right now. So getting email that may look like it's from your company. A lot of times it'll come from the boss. Hey, we've got an important Zoom meeting. We may have to do some furloughing. You need to be on this meeting, okay? What are your company's policies and procedures for this stuff? And if it differs at all, no matter how urgent it seems, I pick up the phone and I call my boss or call my team. Hey, did you guys send this? Because I'm not 100% sure. Real quick on data breaches. The Equifax breach was really bad. When you read about a data breach, you can cross your fingers. That's what I used to do when I was in college, taking some math exams. Didn't work for me. It probably won't work for you when it comes to a data breach. A lot of people ask, there's credit monitoring. There's ID theft protection services like LifeLock is very popular. I don't think there's anything wrong with these services. They're absolutely legitimate. However, they are not proactive, they're reactive. So they're going to let you know, hey, someone has opened up a credit card in your name. Is this you or not? That's better than nothing. But if you do a credit freeze, you're being proactive. They're not going to be able to do it. A lot of the services you pay for with a LifeLock type service, you can do on your own for free. So you do a credit freeze. One, it prevents impulse buying, because even myself, I can't open up a new credit card without first unfreezing it. Credit freezes used to vary in cost state to state, but now it is free due to federal legislation for everyone. That's why I highly recommend it. It's not a silver bullet. If my existing credit card gets stolen, a credit freeze is not going to prevent that from being used, but it absolutely will stop cold anybody from trying to open up new credit in my name. So if I go to buy a car tomorrow, I could call that dealership and say, hey, what credit card company do you work with? Because I need you to run a credit report, and I'm going to unfreeze my credit for that one bureau. So instead of unfreezing all three, you can just unfreeze the one. We'll send you information on how to do a credit freeze. I think is your number one weapon, not just for kids, but for yourself as well. And just to wrap up, because this has been coming up a lot, robocalls. I actually have not been getting a lot of these, but talking to clients, a lot of them are. You do have some things you can do here. Wouldn't recommend that. Our phones are very expensive now. What you can do is on your phone, you already have a lot of software. There are apps, legitimate apps you can download that will block robocalls. Check out the settings on your phone that can screen these out for you. And the biggest thing you still have, and I think maybe this is why I'm not getting so many of these, is I'm on a do not call registry list. Every state has these. If you've never signed up for one, they originally were created before cell phones, so I just had my cell number added when I had a landline, and I get maybe one robocall a month. So it's not perfect, but talking to some people, they're getting mass amounts of these. So just to wrap up here, what is your best defense against cybercrime? I don't want anyone to come out of this meeting today thinking that this is what you need to go do. Sit in the middle of the desert, get off the grid, although I think that does look a little relaxing today. No, the internet and the web offer us tons of benefits, right? The ability to buy things virtually, Amazon, buy sports tickets, grocery shop, and have it delivered. There's tons of benefits out there. What you simply need to do is just be a little more careful. Think before you click. Freeze your credit. Strong password management. Take control of this. I know that Ray and his firm had a lot of procedures and policies and steps in place to protect your data, which is great, but they can't prevent your email from getting hacked or you from handing over your passwords to a fraudster. That's where all of us have to just take responsibility for ourselves. And by doing some of these things today, I think you actually are going to make yourself much safer. So I appreciate everyone's time. I know we ran over just a few minutes here. Apologize for that, but it's a lot of information to share. And I really appreciate everybody here taking the time. I'm going to turn it back over to Ray, and we may take a few questions at the end. And if we have any, or if we run out of time, we'll be happy to respond to you individually. And Ray and his team are also going to be providing to you a lot of the information we discussed here today. But I do appreciate everyone's time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ray.
Okay.
There you go.
Am I good? Okay. Hey, Jared, thank you so much. Luckily, well, a couple that was fantastic. I had a few takeaways. I'm sure everyone did. I think one of the first ones that stood out to me was freezing our kids' credit. So if anybody's on this call, I was like, that was number one for me, because we have a lot of families that are raising children, and I didn't realize that was such a risk. I tell you what else jumped out at me too was never trying to click on these links. Going back to my own website, if it's JP Morgan or whatever bank, go click on that thing and not click on these links that are coming to me. That jumped out at me. And, I will say this, I think, and Jared, this is something I'll point out to you if you don't know this, because we've been preaching freeze the credit, which we're so happy that you did that. What's interesting when you freeze your credit for folks trying to log into their Social Security, account, do you realize that they get locked out now because it's bumping up against their credit? Or if they're trying to log in, it's bumping up against the credit thing and it's saying reject, so you have to get a verification code. So that's happened to some of our clients, but I thought that was interesting.
I was not aware of that, and we can try to give information on how to get around that, or not get around it, but how to be ready for that when it happens.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they go in, they forget about, we're trying to update Social Security and their financial plan, and they don't remember their password. They try to go back in and it's bumping up against their credit. So it's a good thing to do, but it prevents you from getting Social Security. And there was, look, there's really only one question, and it's the same question I had. Do you have an opinion on using 1Password, that software? I know you threw a bunch out there, probably 6 of them.
Yeah.
Do you have a fairly strong recommendation for that? Do you think it's safe? Any input there?
I think it's safe. It's a pretty common one, and we'll provide folks a matrix. Again, all these kind of do the same thing. Google also has a password, built-in password manager as well, that I think is pretty solid. I think the key thing there is, I don't know how, unless you've got a photographic memory, which I definitely do not, trying to remember all of these passwords is just impossible. So that's why I really recommend these password managers. I used to also forget passwords, lock myself out, no more. I use Dashlane, but they're all similar. And yeah, that 1Pass is a very solid one.
Okay, good. I think, let me see. Cool. What can we do? All right, it says, all right, let me just read this one. Knowing there has been some security concerns with Zoom video chats since COVID, what can we do to minimize that risk? Because I think it seems like everybody's on Zoom now. So
yeah, that's right. And that's probably why we've seen some of those, is because fraudsters always like to target what's being used the most. So Zoom does have a feature. I did not enable it today, where you can require a password to get into the meeting. So if you're doing a Zoom meeting, if you're just chatting with your spouse, maybe something like that, I don't know if you really need a password for that. But if you're going to be doing something on Zoom that maybe does require your exchange, maybe you're meeting with your lawyer, your advisor, and you're going to be talking about account numbers or something that's sensitive, I probably would recommend using a password for that. But I don't think Zoom necessarily has a lot of security issues, but they're really going after them. The fraudsters are right now. So that's as a company, that's how we've been handling sensitive information on Zoom, is using passwords.
Got it. Well, thanks. Well, Jared, we're probably at, I think, a logical conclusion here, and I think we've answered all the questions. I just want to remind everyone that we are going to send some of this information out, some brochures that will go to all the participants. And some of you, if you're going, we're also going to send the link to this recorded webinar to folks too that missed this meeting. So if they're hearing this, that maybe we'll also follow up with those same brochures. But Jared, thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank everybody for their time, and just have a good evening, and everyone stay very safe and stay well. Thanks again.
Thank you.